Greetings to you all, and it's good to be here again at the Mullet after not having one for a while during Ramadan, as blessed as Ramadan was. I've been asked, I think, to come up here to share a little bit of my experience on Umrah, and I had just come back last Friday from Mecca and Medina. I went on Umrah. It was my first Umrah that I've been on, and also my second Ramadan ever as a Muslim. I think, we just sang the words in the hymns, and what we were singing. We sang, one of the lines was, if I remember correctly, we must be patient to meet the messenger, Rasulullah. And I myself, even though I've known and studied Islam on my own for going on 25 years, and at various times and considered embracing Islam, it took a long time for me to actually do so. And in the process, I think a lot of you probably know my backstory a little bit, but after I was raised Christian, very nominally Protestant, in college became Russian Orthodox and entered an Orthodox monastery and was a priest monk for quite a while. But even during that time, Islam was always on the back burner. I was always very fascinated and interested in Islam, and there were times where I was hot and cold, and it's something I always had to figure out mentally, intellectually, something like, what do I think about Islam, But eventually, at some point, I felt that, this is what I actually believed, and so I left the monastery and embraced it. But even that being said, it takes a while, I think, for faith to descend from your head and your thoughts and your intellect into your heart. And being in a position where Christ was so centered, not just Christ as, Prophet Isa, but Christ as God in the Christian concept, was such an important part of my life, day in and day out. It was the whole purpose of my life. In a way, sort of replacing that allegiance we have to Christ with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not in the same way, but in a similar way, as you're giving your heart to Him, asking for Him for your intercessions, and placing Him as the the greatest of creation. That's something that I think that, especially in my case, and I think in a lot of converts from Christianity, that's something that it takes some time for that. You can assent to the intellectual understanding of the faith, but it takes some time for your heart to be softened, in a sense. And so this is something I was struggling with, I think, for a while, and something during this Lent in particular, right before I left for Umrah. I was sick, and I was in bed for a week, and it was terrible. My head was just really painful, and it was also during Holy Week, and I was remembering, the Christian Holy Week, and remembering the services that I would perform, and the pathos of Good Friday and everything. And I admit I, was a little bit nostalgic for it, I guess, and I missed it, in a sort of homesickness in a way. And again, this is only my, I've only been Muslim for about a year and a half after living in a monastery, which is totally Christian. Every breath, everything you did was Christian. So, but so I went to Sheikh Yahya right before I left, and told him my woes and my troubles, and I felt like I told him I felt like I was being pounded, in a sense, just having all these thoughts and being sick, and the one thing in the Umrah, the way that the Umrah sort of came about is a miracle in itself. I hadn't planned on going, but it sort of fell in my lap. So I was like, all right, I'll go. So I told Sheikh Yahya, I was like, well, the one thing, and well, something that stuck in my head that Sheikh Yahya said a couple months back in a talk was that if you make the right intentions, then 70 doors will open up to you. And so I made the intention. I said, my main intention for going to Umrah is to draw closer to Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to learn to love him, and because I felt there was like a block, in my heart, to be quite honest. And and other than that, I had no expectations for Umrah. I was like, we're gonna go, whatever Allah wills, it'll happen. I don't know what to expect, so I'll go. So, and I won't. We could be here all night or possibly a week to explain everything that happened, but I'll give you a bit of the rundown. So the first day that we were there, we fly into Medina, and I was with Badr, actually. We went to the main masjid in Medina, and we prayed, or I prayed. I was reading Michael Sugich, I think is his name, his book of his experiences in Mecca and Medina, and he said that when he was in Medina, he was just waiting for his car broke down or something, so to pass the time, he was saying salawats to the Prophet like over and over and over again, like 1,000 times, 2,000 times, and when he was doing that, he went into the main masjid in Medina, and he saw this man who was obviously like a very holy man, and this man looked at him and came up to him and embraced him like a complete stranger, and like gave him a blessing and sort of spoke with him like a friend, and he was just blown away by this experience. But the next day he went to the masjid. He wasn't praying at all. Sort of absent-mindedly went in, and he saw the very same man, and he expected to have a connection with him, from the day before. But the man looked at him and just walked away. It was like he never saw him ever before in his life. And he realized that it was something in him that this holy, like this sheikh, this man saw when he was praying the salawats to Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he wasn't praying, that wasn't there. So I had just read this, and I went into the masjid, and this was on my mind, and I was determined that I was going to, make a connection with Rasulullah. So I was praying over and over the salawats, and I saw a man, who for some reason I was drawn to go and, greet him and get his blessing, but he was far off. He looked very holy. He had like a long beard and everything, but he was in the middle of prayers, and I mean, the beard doesn't make you holy necessarily, but there was something about him I could just tell, and I was drawn to him. But he was, praying, and I didn't want to disturb him, so we went and sat far off, and we prayed for about, 45 minutes or so. And when we were done, we got up to leave, and this man came directly all the way over to us and anointed us with oud and gave us, some little gifts. And it was quite amazing because I felt like that's exactly what I had read in the Michael Sugich book. That's exactly what was on my mind when I went there. But it was all connected to the salawats to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that was the door, I think, that opened up this whole experience. So Badr and I, we decided, we sort of walked around. We thought, like, well, what's over here? And we turned a corner, and we ended up right there, at the tomb of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I made, my intention to go there was to draw closer to him, and so I made my intention again. That's heartfelt prayer. I said, "O Rasulullah, bring me to you, draw me closer to you." And that was it, And then we left and had some lunch. But later that day, I started getting these strange phone calls from Saudi numbers. And at first I thought they were people we were connected with, in organizing the trip. And so I would answer it, and they would say, "Hello, where is your hotel? Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, well, we're in an Airbnb," and then I began to realize I didn't know who these people were, but there was all these numbers calling me, and I was like, "Where is your hotel? Where are you?" I was like, I began to get really paranoid, and who are these people? And so we went back to the Airbnb that night, and it was about 2 in the morning, and Suleiman heard a knock on the door, and he answered it, and there were these Saudi men, saying something about, they didn't speak English very well, and we don't speak Arabic very well. We're working on it, they were saying something about we came to take you to the Roda, and Suleiman called me down. And by this point, I'm already pretty paranoid with all these phone calls. And they're like, "We want to take you to the Roda." And I showed them my phone. I was like, "Well, I already got a ticket, but thank you." And they shut the door in their face. And I went and hid upstairs. And the rest of the night, I was kind of peeking out the window to make sure no one was coming. But at about 4 in the morning, Asted Omar woke up and was leaving to go to the masjid, and he opened the door, and the same 2 Saudi guys were there. Apparently they had been waiting there that whole time, and they asked for me by name, and they said, "Is Said here, Said Abdul Latif?" And he said, and I heard this conversation. I was like, "Oh no, don't tell them I'm here." And so he said, "It's like, sure, I'll go get him." So he comes up, and it was like he ratted me out, But I go downstairs, and I'm frozen with fear because it's the same 2 Saudi guys, and they're in the house, and Asted says, like, they're gonna take us to the Roda. And I was like, what? And so, long story short, somehow or other, apparently I'm famous in Saudi Arabia, which I did not know that till recently. But the Prince of Saudi, or the Prince of Medina, found out that I was in Medina. And so he had his guys, first they checked every single hotel to figure out where I was, and then somehow they tracked my phone. I think my passport was connected to my SIM card. So they found out where I was, and they brought a car, and they said, "We're going to take you to the Roda, and we want you to pray. We're going to go and pray Fajr, and then later on Maghrib and have iftar in the Roda." And not just in the Roda, but in the Roda, it's like, I'm sure you know what it is, but it's like it's like right next to Rasulullah's tomb, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so they brought us there, and they put me and myself and everybody else, Suleiman and everybody, directly right next to the Prophet's tomb. And after praying and after iftar, they brought us up to the tomb, and they were explaining everything, and we were as close as we could possibly get. And there were millions of people in Medina for Umrah. Millions of people. And within 24, not even 24 hours, within maybe 12 hours, I guess, of saying this prayer, like going to the tomb of Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and saying, Rasulullah, bring me to you, bring me to you, draw me closer to you. He sent a car directly to where I was staying, picked me up, and did that. And so sometimes you think, some of these, some prayers and asking for, a favor or asking for something to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is kind of figurative, or maybe, but this was the most literal you could possibly get in answering a prayer. And I was just absolutely blown away, and so was everybody else we were with. And this was just day one of a trip where everything was like that. The entire. I am available whenever anybody wants to go. Just give me a call. But it was unbelievable. It was the most unbelievable experience I've ever had in my life. And not, we went to Mecca, and we went to Mecca, and we took a train down, and the Saudis were there waiting for us, and they picked us up, and we had this whole police escort right to the Kaaba with, lights and sirens and everything. It was just unbelievable. I didn't expect any of this to happen whatsoever, but it was clear to me that everything that happened, again, going back to Sheikh Yahya, what he said, if you have the right intentions, then 70 doors will open to you. But not just 70 doors, it was like all the doors in Mecca and Medina were just blown wide open, and we just walked right in. Like, there were millions of people. There was almost 3 million people in Mecca at Umrah, and they took us in the main gate, and we walked right in, like directly in, with a whole police escort, and everything, and it was just unbelievable. So I don't know what else to say. To recount everything during that trip would take a long time, because it was just such a blessed experience. And even Medina too, you could feel it in Medina. It was just it was just an ocean of peace and tranquility, because all of us were there, giving honor to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he invited us there as guests at his house. And so this blockage I felt before this trip, and sometimes faith is very experiential, I think, and you have to. It's like you can read about honey, but you don't know it till you taste it. And in Medina, it was like this. There's this honey from paradise right there at the Roda, and through the intercessions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I don't know, it's just unbelievable. And to have that experience after being Muslim only a year and a half, I'm excited to see, inshallah, what will come next. So, but thank you for listening to my story, and please keep us all in your du'as, and hopefully we can go back for many more Umrahs and Hajj, inshallah. So, thank you.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك